Lihanna stepped off the transport shuttle and felt her stomach drop. Not from nerves, though she had plenty of those, but from the strange lightness that hit her the moment she walked into Kepler Station. Every step made her feel like she might float away. The artificial gravity here was nothing like Earth's pull. She grabbed the handrail to steady herself and heard a small crack. Looking down, she saw a thin line running through the metal where her fingers had gripped it. Her cheeks burned red. She had been on the station for less than 5 minutes and already broken something. Easy does it, she whispered to herself. In Korean, then switched to Universal Standard. Take it slow, Hana. The other passengers from her shuttle were having no trouble at all. A tall, thin being with blue skin glided past her like it was swimming through water. Another creature that looked like walking crystal moved with perfect balance. Only Hannah seemed to be struggling with the simple act of walking. The arrival bay was massive, with a ceiling that stretched up so high she could barely see it. Hundreds of beings moved around her, representing dozens of different species she had only seen in textbooks. Some floated in bubbles filled with gas. Others wore special suits that helped them move. A few looked almost human, except for the wrong number of eyes or arms in strange places. All of them moved with the same easy grace in the low gravity, all except Hannah. Lihanna? The voice came from behind her. She turned, trying not to bounce too much, and saw another human walking toward her. The relief that washed over her was immediate and strong. That's me, she said, offering her hand for a shake. The man smiled and took it, but she noticed how carefully he controlled his grip. Troy Deho, human ambassador to the Galactic Coalition. Welcome to Kepler Station. His Korean accent was warm and familiar. I see you're getting used to the gravity. Is it always this light? Hannah asked, taking another careful step. 0.3 standard gravity, Deho said with a sympathetic smile. The station keeps it low to accommodate the more fragile species. You'll get used to it, but it takes time. Try to move slower than feels natural. Think of yourself as being underwater. Hannah nodded and took his advice. The underwater feeling actually helped. As they walked through the station, Deho pointed out important locations. The medical bay, the dining halls, the academic buildings, and finally the dormitories. You'll be sharing a living space with 3 other students, he explained as they rode a lift that moved so slowly Hannah wanted to scream. The university tries to mix species when possible. It's part of the learning experience. The dormitory hall was quiet when they arrived. Deho led her to a door marked with symbols she couldn't read and pressed his hand to a scanner. The door slid open to reveal a common area with furniture that looked like it had been designed by someone who had never seen a chair before. Your roommates are in classes right now, Deho said. This gives you time to settle in before meeting them. Your room is the second door on the right. Anna's room was small but clean. The bed looked like it would collapse if she sat on it too. Hard. The desk was made of some kind of metal that bent slightly when she set her bag down on it. Everything in the room seemed designed for beings much lighter and more delicate than humans. The other students will be back in about an hour, Deho said. I should warn you that many of them have never met a human before. They might seem nervous around you. Nervous? Why? Deho paused at the door. Because Earth is classified as a Class 12 Deathworld, Hana. To most of the galaxy, you're essentially an alien from a planet that would kill them in minutes. They don't understand that humans can be gentle. After he left, Hana sat on her bed very carefully and thought about his words. She had known Earth was considered dangerous by galactic standards, but she had never thought of herself as dangerous. She was just a 19-year-old engineering student who wanted to learn about alien technology and maybe make some friends along the way. An hour later, voices in the common area told her that her roommates had returned. Hannah took a deep breath and opened her door. 3 beings looked up at her from where they sat around a low table. The conversation stopped immediately. Hi, Hannah said, raising her hand in what she hoped was a friendly wave. I'm Lihanna. I guess we're going to be roommates. The silence stretched for several uncomfortable seconds. Then one of them, a being that looked like it was made of purple mist held together in a roughly humanoid shape, spoke up. I am Quillith, it said in a voice like wind through leaves. This is Milkari and Raxon. Milkari looked like a giant insect with delicate see-through wings. Raxon resembled a lizard that had learned to walk upright, covered in small green scales. It's nice to meet all of you, Hannah said, moving slowly into the room. She noticed how all three of them tensed slightly as she approached. I hope we can be friends. You are the human, Raxon said. It wasn't a question. Yes, I'm from Earth. I'm here for the engineering exchange program. Engineering? Milkari's voice was high and musical. But you are from a death world. Why would you study engineering? Hannah wasn't sure how to answer that. Because I like building things? Because I want to learn how different species solve problems? The three aliens exchanged looks that Hannah couldn't interpret. We did not expect a human to be interested in academic pursuits, Quilla said carefully. The reputation of your species is more focused on military applications. Oh, Hannah felt her heart sink a little. Well, I'm not military. I just want to learn. And maybe teach a little too, if anyone's interested in human engineering. What kind of things do humans build? Raxon asked, and Hannah heard genuine curiosity. In his voice, all sorts of things. Cities, spaceships, computers, art. We build things to make life better, easier, more beautiful. She sat down on one of the strange chairs, which creaked alarmingly under her weight. What about your species? What do you like to build? For the next hour, they talked about their different worlds and the things their species created. Hannah learned that Quillith's people built structures out of crystallized gases that could exist in multiple dimensions at once. Milkari's species grew their buildings from living materials that could repair themselves. Raxon's people carved entire cities from single massive stones. The conversation was going well until Hannah reached for a snack from the bowl on the table. The movement was casual, normal for a human, but all three of her roommates flinched back like she had pulled out a weapon. Sorry, Hannah said quickly, pulling her hand back. Did I do something wrong? You moved very quickly, Milkari said in a small voice. We were not prepared. Hannah looked at her own hand, confused. The movement had felt slow to her, careful even. But she remembered Deho's words about moving like she was underwater. I'll try to move more slowly, she promised. I don't want to make anyone uncomfortable. It is not your fault, Quilla said kindly. We simply need time to adjust to having a Deathworlder as a roommate. This is new for all of us. That night, as Hannah lay in her too-soft bed listening to the quiet sounds of her alien roommates settling in for sleep, she wondered what she had gotten herself into. She had come to Kepler Station to prove that humans could contribute to galactic society in ways beyond fighting and surviving. But it seemed like everyone already had their minds made up about what humans were good for. She thought about her brother Jiwan back on Earth, who had warned her that the galaxy wasn't ready for humans who wanted to be more than just soldiers and bodyguards. Maybe he had been right, but Hannah wasn't ready to give up. She had worked too hard to get here. Tomorrow would be her first day of classes. Tomorrow, she would start showing the galaxy that humans could be more than just survivors from a dangerous world. She would prove that humans could be scholars, inventors, and friends. She just had to remember to move very, very slowly. 3 weeks into her stay at Kepler Station, Hannah had learned to walk like she was moving through thick honey. Her alien roommates had stopped jumping every time she reached for something, and she had even made a few friends in her classes. The engineering program was everything she had hoped it would be and more. The professor for advanced structural design was a floating jellyfish-like being called Professor Tenther. It communicated through color changes in its translucent body, which a computer then translated into universal standard. Today's assignment was to design a support structure for a space station that could house multiple species with different environmental needs. Hannah found herself working with a group that included Milkari, her insect-like roommate, a gaseous being named Vortex, and a crystalline creature called Vextai. The crystal being had joined their group late, after his original teammates had requested transfers to other groups. The key problem, Vextai announced in his sharp, brittle voice, is creating separate environmental zones without compromising structural integrity. Hannah nodded, looking at their preliminary designs. What if we used a honeycomb structure? The hexagonal cells would distribute stress evenly while allowing for different atmospheric controls in each section. Hexagonal? Vextai's crystal body caught the light as he turned toward her. That is a very primitive approach. My species has been building crystalline structures for millions of years. We understand that true efficiency comes from geometric perfection, not simple tessellations. But hexagons are actually very efficient, Hannah said, trying to keep her voice friendly. Bees use them because they provide maximum storage with minimum material. The math works out perfectly for structural loads. Bees? Vextai's voice carried a note of disgust. You are comparing advanced engineering to insect behavior? This is exactly what I would expect from a deathworlder. Nokari made a small chittering sound that Hannah had learned meant she was upset. My species is insectoid, Vextai. Are you saying our engineering is primitive too? That is different, Vextai said quickly. Your people have evolved beyond basic instincts, but humans. He gestured at Hannah with one of his sharp crystal arms. They are barely out of their caves. They solve problems by hitting them with bigger rocks. Hannah felt heat rising in her cheeks, but she forced herself to stay calm. I think you might be wrong about human engineering. We've built some pretty impressive things. Like what? Weapons? Ships designed only to survive your violent planet? Like the Sydney Harbor Bridge, Hannah said. Or the International Space Station. Or the fusion reactors that power our cities. We don't just build things to survive. We build things to live well. Vextai made a sound like breaking glass that Hannah realized was laughter. Please, your species has been in space for what? A few hundred years? My people were building cities in zero gravity before your planet even had life on it? The other group members were looking uncomfortable. Vortex swirled nervously, and Nokari had started the low humming that meant she was stressed. Look, Hannah sighed, I'm not trying to compete with anyone. I just think different approaches might be useful. Maybe we could combine crystalline techniques with organic design principles. Combine? Vextai's voice went even sharper. You think your crude methods could improve upon crystalline perfection? This is the problem with letting deathworlders into academic programs. You have no understanding of true engineering. Hannah took a deep breath. She could feel her heart rate increasing, which she knew meant her body was preparing for conflict. But this wasn't a conflict she could solve with her fists. This was exactly the kind of situation she needed to handle carefully. Maybe we should just try different approaches, she suggested. We could design 2 versions and see which one Professor Tenther likes better. Fine, Vextai said. But when your primitive honeycomb structure fails under stress analysis, perhaps you will understand why deathworlders should stick to what they do best. Which is what, exactly? Hannah asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to hear the answer. Violence, Vextai said simply. Breaking things, your species is very good at that. The words stung more than Hannah expected. She had worked so hard to get into this program, had scored in the top 1% of applicants from across the galaxy. But to Vextai, none of that mattered. She was just a violent primitive from a dangerous world. They worked in tense silence for the rest of the class period. Hannah developed her hexagonal design while Vextai created something that looked like a complex crystal formation. Both structures were mathematically sound, but they represented completely different philosophies of engineering. When Professor Tenther reviewed their work, the jellyfish's body flashed bright blue with approval for both designs. Excellent work from both teams, the translation computer announced. The hexagonal structure shows remarkable efficiency and elegance. The crystalline matrix demonstrates sophisticated mathematical principles. Both would work well for their intended purposes. Vextai's body dimmed with what Hannah was learning to recognize as anger in his species. Professor, surely you can see that the crystalline approach is superior? The mathematical complexity alone. Complexity is not always superiority, Vextai, Professor Tenther replied, flashing yellow for mild disapproval. Sometimes the most elegant solution is also the simplest. After class, Hana gathered her materials slowly, trying to avoid another confrontation, but Vextai wasn't finished with her. "You think you have proven something?" he said, blocking her path to the door. "But everyone knows humans only got into this program because the Coalition is afraid of your species. They let you in to keep you happy, not because you belong here." "That's not true," Hana said, but doubt crept into her voice. What if he was right? What if she was only here because of politics, isn't it? When was the last time a human won a galactic engineering prize? When has your species contributed anything to galactic science beyond weapons and military tactics? Hana opened her mouth to argue, then closed it again. She didn't have good answers to his questions. Humans were new to the galactic community, and they had mostly made their mark through military service and security work. "See?" Vextai said, reading her expression. "Deep down you know I am right. You are a deathworlder playing at being a scholar, but you cannot change what you are." Other students were starting to stare. Hana realized that her hands had clenched into fists without her meaning to. She forced them to relax, took a step back. "I belong here just as much as you do," she said quietly. "I earned my place in this program. Did you? Or did the admissions committee simply want to avoid having angry humans show up at their door? That was too far." Hana felt something cold and angry settle in her stomach. When she spoke, her voice was perfectly calm, which somehow made it more frightening. "You know what, Vextai? You're right about one thing. Humans are very good at breaking things, but we're also very good at fixing them. And we're extremely good at learning from our mistakes." Something in her tone made Vextai take a step back. Around them, other students had stopped what they were doing to watch. "We'll see," Vextai said, but his voice had lost some of its certainty. "We'll see if you can prove you belong here, Deathworlder." Hana watched him leave, her heart still pounding. She had kept her temper, barely, but she could feel cracks forming in her careful control. Vextai seemed determined to push her until she snapped, until she proved his point about humans being violent primitives. The worst part was that she was starting to wonder if he might be right. Not about humans being primitive, but about her not belonging here. Maybe she was just a Deathworlder playing dress-up, pretending to be something she wasn't. As she walked back to her dorm, Hana made a promise to herself. She would prove that humans belonged in the galaxy's academic community. She would show Vextai and everyone else that being from a Deathworld didn't make her a savage. She just hoped she could do it, without breaking anything important in the process. The confrontation had been building for days. Every shared class with Vextai brought new challenges, new ways for the crystalline being to question Hana's presence at the university. He questioned her answers in class, dismissed her ideas in group projects, and made snide comments about Deathworlder logic. Whenever she spoke, Hana had tried everything she could think of to defuse the situation. She had been patient, polite, and professional. She had offered to work with him instead of against him. She had even tried to find common ground in their shared love of engineering. Nothing worked. Today's advanced materials lab was supposed to be different. They were working with crystalline growth matrices, which was Vextai's specialty. Hana had hoped that letting him take the lead might help ease the tension between them. Instead, it seemed to make him more aggressive. No, Vextai said, his crystal body flashing with irritation as Hana attempted to adjust the growth parameters on their shared workstation. "You are doing it completely wrong. This requires precision, not brute force." "I'm being very precise," Hana said, keeping her voice level. She had been measuring the crystal lattice spacing to the nanometer, exactly as the instructions specified. "The readings are all within acceptable parameters." "Acceptable for a Deathworlder, perhaps," Vextai said. "But this is real science, not the crude approximations your species calls engineering." Around them, other students were starting to notice the argument. Hana could see Melkari and Quillith at the next workstation, both looking worried. Even their lab instructor, Dr. Kethril, was glancing over with concern. "Look," Hana said, trying. One more time to make peace. Why don't you show me the proper technique? I'm here to learn. Finally, some sense, Vextai said. Watch carefully. This is how beings with actual understanding approach delicate work. He moved to the control panel and began making adjustments. His movements were quick and confident, and Hana had to admit that his technique was flawless. The crystal matrix responded beautifully to his touch, growing in perfect geometric patterns. See, he said. This is what real precision looks like. This is what you could never achieve, no matter how hard you try. It's very impressive, Hana said honestly. Could you teach me how to ... Teach you? Vextai laughed, the sound like wind chimes in a storm. You think this is something that can be taught? This requires an understanding of crystalline structures that your primitive brain could never grasp. Hana felt her jaw clench, but she forced herself to stay calm. I might surprise you. Humans are pretty good at learning new things. Humans are good at breaking things and making crude copies of what others have built. You are scavengers, not creators. That's not fair, Hana said, her voice getting harder. You don't know anything about human achievements. I know enough, Vextai said. Your species has contributed nothing to galactic civilization except violence and noise. You are a mistake that was allowed into this program out of misguided charity. Something snapped inside Hana. She had tried being patient. She had tried being understanding. She had bent over backwards to accommodate his prejudices and prove that humans could be reasonable, but enough was enough. You know what, Vextai? She said, straightening up to her full height. You're wrong about humans, and you're wrong about me. We might be new to the galactic community, but we're not primitive. We're not scavengers, and we sure as hell aren't mistakes. Prove it, Vextai said, moving closer to her. Show me one thing your species has created that could match crystalline perfection. I don't have to prove anything to you, Hana said. My work speaks for itself. Your work is adequate at best. You got into this program because the admissions committee was afraid of what humans might do if they were rejected. You are here because of fear, not merit. Stop it, Hana said, her voice rising. Other students were definitely watching now. Just stop it. I earned my place here. Did you? Or did some administrator look at your application and think, well, we better let the Deathworlder in, or her people might come looking for revenge? Hana felt heat flooding her face. Her hands were shaking with the effort of not hitting something. You don't know what you're talking about. I know exactly what I am talking about. You are a primitive from a savage world, playing at being civilized. But underneath all your careful politeness, you are still just a violent animal. I am not an animal, Hana said through gritted teeth. No? Then prove it. Show me this famous human restraint. Show me that you can handle criticism without resorting to the violence that your species is known for. Vextai stepped even closer, his crystal form towering over her. Go ahead, Deathworlder, hit me. Show everyone what you really are. Get away from me, Hana said, taking a step back, but Vextai followed, pressing his advantage. What's wrong? Afraid to show your true nature? Or are you finally realizing that you don't belong here? I said get away from me. Make me, Vextai said. Use those famous Deathworlder reflexes. Show us all what happens when a human gets angry. He reached out and grabbed her arm, his crystal fingers wrapping around her forearm just above the wrist. To him it probably felt like a gentle grip, barely worth noticing. His species was used to handling crystalline structures that could withstand enormous pressure. What felt normal to him was something else entirely to a human. The crack was loud. In the suddenly quiet lab, it sounded like a branch snapping, sharp and final. Hana gasped, more from surprise than pain at first. Then the pain hit, a white-hot spike that shot up her arm and into her shoulder. She looked down at her arm, still trapped in Vextai's grip. It was bent at an angle that arms weren't supposed to bend. Her radius bone had snapped cleanly through. The lab fell completely silent. Even the humming of the equipment seemed to quiet down. Vextai stared at her arm in shock, his crystal body losing its bright color. You broke so easily, he said, his voice barely a whisper. Hana looked up at him, her face pale but her eyes burning with something that made several nearby students take involuntary steps backward. When she spoke, her voice was perfectly calm, which somehow made it more terrifying than screaming would have been. "Yes," she said, "I broke easily. Do you know why?" Vextai shook his head, still staring at her arm. "Because I was being gentle," Hannah said. "Because I was holding back. Because I was trying so hard to prove that humans could be civilized that I forgot to protect myself." She gently pulled her arm free from his now slack grip, cradling it against her chest. "You wanted to know what humans are really like? You wanted to see what happens when we stop being polite?" Vextai took a step back, then another. "You broke my arm with what felt like a gentle touch to you," Hannah continued, her voice still eerily calm. "Do you want to know what a gentle touch feels like to me?" Around them, students were backing away. Someone had called for Dr. Kethril, who was rushing over with a medical kit. But nobody wanted to get between Hannah and Vextai. I did not mean ... Vex stammered. "No," Hannah said. "You didn't mean to break my arm? Just like I don't mean to crack handrails when I hold them. Just like I don't mean to dent furniture when I sit on it. The difference is I know how fragile everything around me is. I spend every moment of every day being careful not to break things." She took a step toward him, and Vextai flinched back. "But you wanted to see the real me, didn't you? You wanted to prove that humans are just violent animals. Well, congratulations. You found out what happens when a deathworlder stops being careful." Dr. Kethril reached them, his fur standing on end with anxiety. "Miss Lee, please, let me look at your arm. We need to get you to medical immediately." Hannah nodded, but her eyes never left Vextai's face. "You're going to think about this moment for a long time," she told him. "Every time you see me in class, every time we work on a project together, you're going to remember how easily I broke. And you're going to wonder what would happen if you made me angry instead of just sad." She turned to follow Dr. Kethril toward the medical bay, then paused and looked back. "The funny thing is," she said, "you were right about one thing. Humans are very good at breaking things. We just usually choose not to." As she walked away, cradling her broken arm, the lab remained silent. Vextai stood frozen where she had left him, staring at the small drops of human blood on the floor. For the first time since arriving at Kepler Station, everyone was seeing Lihana exactly as she was, not a primitive pretending to be civilized, but a predator who had chosen to be gentle. And now that choice had been tested, they all understood just how much restraint she had been showing all along. Dr. Melcari's compound eyes reflected a rainbow of colors as she examined Hannah's broken arm under the medical scanner. The insectoid doctor had been working at Kepler Station for 15 years, but she had never treated a human before. What she was seeing on her screens was fascinating and disturbing in equal measure. "Remarkable," she murmured, her wings fluttering with excitement. "Absolutely remarkable. Is it bad?" Hannah asked from where she lay on the medical table. The pain medication Dr. Melcari had given her was working, but she could still feel the deep ache in her arm. "Bad? Oh no, my dear. This is extraordinary. I have never seen a skeletal system quite like this." Dr. Melcari gestured to the holographic display showing Hannah's bone structure. "Your bones are incredibly dense, almost like crystalline matrix. But organic, and look at this muscle attachment points. Such efficiency." "I'm glad you find it interesting," Hannah said weakly. "Can you fix it?" Of course. The bioregeneration field will have you healed in a few hours. But first I must ask you some questions. For medical records, you understand." Dr. Melcari pulled up a chair, her movements quick and precise. "Tell me, what is normal atmospheric pressure on your world?" About 101.3 kilopascals at sea level," Hannah replied. Wondering why that mattered for a broken arm. Dr. Melcari's antennae twitched with surprise. 101.3? Are you certain? That seems impossibly high. I'm sure. Why? Because normal atmospheric pressure for most inhabited worlds is between 30 and 50 kilopascals. Anything above 70 would be considered dangerous. Dr. Melcari made notes on her tablet. And your oxygen percentage? About 21%. 21? Dr. Melcari's wings buzzed in alarm. My dear child, oxygen above 15% is toxic to most species. How do you not suffer from oxygen poisoning? Hannah blinked, confused. I don't understand. That's just normal air for humans. Normal? Dr. Melcari studied her scanner readings again. What about gravity? What is standard gravity on Earth? 9.8 meters per second squared. Dr. Melcari was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, very carefully, that is more than 3 times galactic standard gravity. Are you telling me that you grew up in an environment with crushing atmospheric pressure, toxic oxygen levels, and gravity that would kill most species? I guess so, Hannah said. I mean, I knew Earth was classified as a death world, but I didn't realize. My dear, Dr. Melcari said gently, Earth isn't just classified as a death world. It's a Class 12 death world. Do you know what that means? Hannah shook her head. It means that 99.97% of all known galactic species would die within hours of exposure to your planet's environment. Not days, not weeks, hours. Dr. Melcari's voice carried a note of awe. Your world is so hostile that we use it as a baseline for measuring planetary danger levels. The words sank in slowly. Hannah had always known Earth was considered dangerous, but she had never really understood what that meant. To her, Earth was just home, normal, safe. But I'm not dangerous, she said. I'm just a student. Not dangerous? Dr. Melcari laughed, a sound like wind chimes. My dear child, your resting heart rate would indicate cardiac distress in most species. Your blood pressure would be immediately fatal to a being like Quillith. Your body temperature would give fever nightmares to creatures from ice worlds. Dr. Melcari pulled up another display, showing Hannah's vital signs alongside those of other species. The differences were staggering. What was normal for Hannah was off the charts for everyone else. This is why Vextai was able to break your arm so easily, Dr. Melcari explained. Your bones are incredibly strong by galactic standards, but they're also incredibly light. Your body had to find a balance between strength and efficiency that would let you survive in an environment that would crush most of us. So I am fragile, Hannah said, feeling a familiar sense of disappointment. Fragile? Dr. Melcari stared at her. My dear, you are possibly the most robust life form I have ever encountered. Your fragile bones are still 3 times stronger than Vextai's crystalline structure. Your weak muscles could lift equipment that requires mechanical assistance for most species. She gestured to the scanner readings again. Look at your cardiovascular system. Your heart is essentially a high-pressure pump designed to force blood through your body against crushing gravity. Your lungs process oxygen at concentrations that would burn out most respiratory systems. Your nervous system operates at speeds that allow for reaction times measured in milliseconds. Hannah stared at the medical displays, seeing herself for the first time through Eli's eyes. But if we're so robust, why do we break so easily around other species? Because you're efficient, Dr. Melcari said. Other species had to build their bodies like tanks to survive on their gentle worlds. You learn to build yourselves like racing cars. Lightweight, incredibly powerful, and precisely engineered. She pulled up a comparison chart showing different species strength-to-weight ratios. Humans weren't just at the top of the chart. They were so far above everyone else that they needed their own scale. When Vextai grabbed your arm, he used what felt like normal pressure to him. But his species evolved on a high-gravity world, though nothing compared to yours. His normal grip strength is designed to handle crystalline structures under intense pressure, applied to human bone architecture, which is optimized for efficiency rather than brute resistance. It snapped, Hannah finished. Exactly, but here's what's truly fascinating. Dr. Melcari highlighted another section of the scan. Your bone is already beginning to heal, and it's healing stronger than before. Human bones actually adapt to stress by becoming more resistant to similar damage. That's just normal for us. Normal? Dr. Melcari's antennae nearly vibrated off her head. Most species require weeks of medical intervention to heal broken bones. You'll be completely recovered in a few hours, and your arm will be stronger than it was before the injury. A soft chime indicated that someone was requesting entry to the medical bay. Dr. Melkari checked her screen and saw Ambassador Troy Deho waiting outside. "Ah, your human diplomat has come to check on you." "Shall I let him in?" Hannah nodded, and Dr. Melkari opened the door. Deho entered, his face showing concern and something else. "Anger, maybe, or disappointment. How are you feeling, Hannah?" he asked, pulling up a chair beside her bed. "The better. Dr. Melkari has been explaining some things about human biology that I never really understood." "I see." Deho glanced at the medical displays. "Dr. Melkari, would you mind if I had a private word with Miss Lee?" "Of course, I'll be in my office if you need anything." The insectoid doctor gathered her equipment and left them alone. "The whole station is talking about what happened in the lab," Deho said once they were alone. "Some of the alien students are scared. A few are calling for humans to be removed from the academic program." Hannah felt her heart sink. "I didn't do anything wrong. Vextai grabbed me and my arm broke. It wasn't my fault." "I know that, and officially that's exactly what happened. Vextai used excessive force during an argument, resulting in injury to another student. He's being disciplined accordingly. But the incident has raised questions about human participation in the program. Questions about whether we can safely interact with other species in academic settings." Hannah stared at the ceiling, feeling tears prick at her eyes. "So they're going to send me home?" "No," Deho said firmly. But we need to be more careful. We need to help the other species understand what humans are, not just what they think we are." "And what are we?" Deho was quiet for a moment. "We're the children of a world that tried very hard to kill us, Hannah. We're the result of 4 billion years of evolution on a planet that doesn't forgive weakness. We're survivors, but we're also more than that." He gestured toward the medical equipment. "Around them, Dr. Mokari is right. We're incredibly efficient. We're built to do impossible things and make them look easy. The problem is that when you're that efficient, that powerful, everyone else looks fragile by comparison. So what do I do?" "You heal, you go back to class. And you show them that being powerful doesn't mean being dangerous. You show them that humans can choose to be gentle, even when we don't have to be." Deho stood up to leave, then paused at the door. "And Hannah, what you said to Vextai in the lab about humans being good at breaking things but usually choosing not to, yeah? That might have been the most important lesson anyone has learned at this university in a long time." After he left, Hannah lay back and watched the bioregeneration field work on her arm. The bones were already knitting back together, stronger than before. She thought about what Dr. Melkari had told her about humans being built like racing cars. Instead of tank stop, maybe that was the key. Maybe the secret wasn't to prove that humans weren't dangerous. Maybe it was to prove that dangerous things could choose to be safe. That predators could choose to be protectors, that deathworlders could choose to be gentle. 2 days after the incident in the lab, Hannah's arm was completely healed. Not just functional, but actually stronger than it had been before. Dr. Melkari had been fascinated by the healing process, taking scans every few hours to document how human bone regenerated. Most species took weeks to heal from similar injuries. Hannah was back to normal in 48 hours, but while her arm had healed, the social damage was taking longer to repair. Students who had been warming up to her were now keeping their distance again. In the cafeteria, conversation stopped when she approached. Her study groups had grown smaller as nervous classmates found excuses to work elsewhere. Hannah tried to understand their fear. She really did. But it was hard to think of herself as dangerous when she spent every waking moment being careful not to break things. "The door to our sticks sometimes," Quillith mentioned that evening as they worked on homework in their common area. "It requires significant force to open." "I can take a look at it," Hannah offered. "Oh, that's not necessary," Quillith said quickly. "Melkari has requested maintenance to examine it." Hannah nodded, but she noticed that Quillith had moved slightly farther away from her. Even her roommates, who had gotten used to living with a human, were being more cautious around her now. The pattern continued over the next few days. Professors were more careful about assigning her to group projects. Lab partners found reasons to work on individual assignments instead. Even the maintenance staff seemed nervous when she was around. It was Dr. Melkari who finally helped Hannah understand what was really happening. "They are not afraid of you specifically," the insectoid doctor explained during one of their follow-up appointments. "They are afraid of what you represent," which is what? The unknown. Most of the galaxy's species evolved on worlds that were, by human standards, quite gentle. Worlds with light gravity, thin atmospheres, stable climates. When they encounter problems, they solve them through cooperation, technology, or by avoiding the problem entirely. Dr. Melkari gestured to a display showing various planetary classifications. But humans evolved on a world that was actively trying to kill them. You learn to solve problems by becoming stronger, faster, more resilient. You learn to face danger instead of avoiding it. That doesn't make us monsters. No, but it makes you incomprehensible to many species. They look at humans and see beings who could easily destroy them, who choose not to for reasons they don't understand. Hannah was thinking about this conversation when she got an unexpected visitor. Kim Sola, her best friend from Earth, had arrived on the same transport that brought new supplies to the station. "Surprise," Sola said, bouncing into the dorm common area with the kind of energy that made all of Hannah's roommates scatter like startled birds. "I was selected for the short-term exchange program. I get to spend 2 weeks here learning about xenobiology." Hannah hugged her friend, grateful for the familiar presence. But she also noticed how the simple act of Sola walking into the room had changed the entire atmosphere. The alien students who had been working at the study tables suddenly found reasons to be elsewhere. "Wow," Sola said, looking around at the quickly emptying room. "Friendly bunch." "They're usually not like this," Hannah said. "There was an incident a few days ago. They're still adjusting." "What kind of incident?" Hannah explained what had happened with Vextai, trying to make it sound less dramatic than it had been. But Sola knew her too well. "He broke your arm and people are treating you like the dangerous one? It's complicated." "No, it's stupid," Sola said. She walked over to one of the study tables and examined the delicate-looking chairs. "These things look like they're made of paper. How do you even sit on them?" "Very carefully." Sola laughed and flopped down in one of the chairs. It creaked alarmingly but held her weight. "This is so weird. It's like everything here is made for dolls." Over the next few hours, Hannah watched her friend explore the station with the casual confidence that all humans seem to possess. Sola opened doors that Hannah had learned to treat gently. She picked up objects that Hannah always handled with extreme care. She moved at speeds that Hannah had trained herself to avoid, and everywhere they went, alien students and staff watched with a mixture of fascination and alarm. "The food dispensers are so slow," Sola complained in the cafeteria, drumming her fingers impatiently while waiting for her meal. The drumming made small dents in the metal surface. "They're designed for species with different reaction times," Hannah explained. "We process information faster than most aliens." "How much faster?" Dr. Melkari said our nervous systems operate at speeds that allow for reaction times measured in milliseconds. "Most species think in terms of full seconds," Sola blinked. "So from their perspective, we're like ... She paused, thinking. "Like hummingbirds? Everything we do is too fast for them to follow easily?" "Something like that." They found a table in a quiet corner of the cafeteria. Around them, Hannah could see other diners stealing glances at them. 2 humans in one place was apparently noteworthy. "I'm starting to understand why you've been having problems," Sola said, cutting into her meal. The knife went through the alien protein like it was butter, even though Hannah had learned it was supposed to be tough and chewy. They see us as these super fast, super strong beings who could hurt them without even meaning to. "That's pretty much it, but we would never hurt them on purpose." "They don't know that." All they know about humans comes from stories about our military, or from watching us try to fit into spaces designed for much smaller, weaker beings. Sola looked around the cafeteria, really seeing it for the first time. The chairs that looked flimsy because they were designed for beings who weighed half what humans did. The doors that opened slowly because most species didn't need to move quickly. The delicate serving utensils that bent under human grip strength. It's like we're giants visiting a village of tiny people, she said quietly. Everything we do has the potential to cause damage, even when we're being as careful as we can. Exactly. But that's not our fault. We can't help being what we are. No. But we can help how we react to it. Sola raised an eyebrow. You sound like you've been thinking about this a lot. I have. Ever since the incident with Vextai, I've been trying to figure out how to prove that humans can be trusted. That we're not just dangerous animals pretending to be civilized. And have you figured it out? Hannah hesitated. Maybe, Dr. Melkari said something that stuck with me. She said most species solve problems by avoiding them or by using technology. But humans learn to solve problems by becoming stronger. So maybe the answer isn't to prove we're not strong. Maybe it's to prove that we can choose how to use our strength. They were interrupted by a commotion near the entrance to the cafeteria. A group of students was clustered around something, their voices raised in concern. Hannah could hear someone crying. Without thinking, both humans stood up and moved toward the disturbance. Their natural reaction times had them across the room before most of the aliens had even finished processing what was happening. A young Zarathi student had collapsed near the food dispensers. The Zarathi were one of the more fragile species, resembling tall, thin plants with delicate crystalline leaves. This one was clearly in distress, its leaves wilting and changing from green to yellow. What happened? Hannah asked the nearest student, a furry mammalian species she didn't recognize. Kithara was getting food when she suddenly collapsed. We don't know what's wrong. Has anyone called medical? Sola asked. We tried, but the communication system is not responding in this section. Hannah looked at the collapsed student, then at the crowd of worried aliens standing around doing nothing. They were all clearly concerned, but none of them seemed to know what to do in an emergency. Sola, can you get to the medical bay and bring Dr. Melkari? I'll stay with Kithara. On it, Sola said, and sprinted out of the cafeteria at a speed. That left the alien student staring. Hannah knelt beside the collapsed Zarathi, being careful not to put her full weight on the delicate floor. Kithara, can you hear me? The plant-like being's leaves rustled weakly. Can single quotes ... breathe ... wrong air ... Hannah looked up at the ventilation system, then at the food dispensers. A horrible suspicion occurred to her. Is this your first time in? The main cafeteria? Yes, ... wanted to try ... human food. Oh no, Hannah realized what had happened. The human section of the cafeteria used a different atmospheric mix to accommodate the higher oxygen levels humans needed. Kithara had wandered into an environment that was slowly poisoning her, moving faster than most of the watching aliens could follow. Hannah scooped up the delicate student and carried her toward the main entrance, where the air would be safer. Kithara weighed almost nothing, but Hannah was terrified of holding her too tightly and causing damage. Dr. Melkari arrived just as Hannah reached the safer atmospheric zone. What happened? Atmospheric poisoning, Hannah explained quickly. She was in the human section, breathing 21% oxygen. Oh my. Quick thinking, Miss Lee. Dr. Melkari immediately began treating Kithara with a portable atmospheric regulator. As the crisis passed and Kithara began to recover, Hannah became aware that a crowd had gathered to watch. Dozens of alien students and staff were staring at her, with expressions she couldn't quite read. You move so fast, one of them said. We barely saw you react before you were helping. The conversation with Ambassador Quillith happened 3 days after Hannah had saved Kithara from atmospheric poisoning. The ethereal gas being had requested a private meeting, which surprised Hannah since Quillith was usually more of an observer than a participant in station politics. They met in one of the meditation chambers, A quiet space designed to accommodate beings who needed different atmospheric conditions. Quillith floated in a containment field filled with the methane-rich gases her species breathed, while Hana sat cross-legged on a cushion nearby. You have been wondering why the incident with Vextai caused such strong reactions, Quillith said, her voice like wind through leaves, and why your rescue of Kithara seemed to change many minds. It has crossed my mind, Hana admitted. I'm still trying to understand the social dynamics here. Then let me explain something about galactic civilization that humans may not fully grasp, Quillith said. For most species, advancement comes through cooperation and avoidance of conflict. We solve problems by building consensus, by finding technological solutions, or by simply avoiding situations that might be dangerous. Hana nodded. She had observed this pattern in her classes and interactions with other students. But humans, Quillith continued, represent something different. You solve problems by confronting them directly. You see danger and move toward it, instead of away from it. This is incomprehensible to many species. Is that why everyone was so afraid after Vextai broke my arm? Partly, but there was something else at work. Something more complex. Quillith's gaseous form swirled thoughtfully. Tell me, what do you know about the Hegemony Wars? Hana searched her memory. Not much. I know there were conflicts about 200 years ago, before humans joined the galactic community. Some species tried to dominate others through force. Indeed. The hegemony was led by species that believed might made right. They used their physical advantages to control weaker civilizations, forcing them into subservient roles. Quillith's voice carried a note of old pain. My own people were enslaved for nearly 50 years? I'm sorry, I didn't know. The hegemony was eventually defeated by a coalition of free species, but the fear remains. When most aliens see a physically powerful species, they remember the hegemony. They wonder if history will repeat itself. Understanding began to dawn on Hana, so when they look at humans, they see a species that could easily dominate the galaxy if they chose to. Your physical capabilities, your reaction speeds, your problem-solving methods. All of it resembles what the hegemony species were like. Hana felt a chill run down her spine. But we're not like that. Humans don't want to dominate anyone. I know this. Many of us know this, but fear is not always rational. Quillith moved closer to the edge of her containment field. This is why. Vextai-S actions were so significant he was testing you. Testing me how? Vextai belongs to the crystalline assembly, one of the species that fought hardest against the hegemony. His people are proud, strong, and deeply suspicious of any species that might threaten galactic peace. When he broke your arm, he was trying to provoke you into showing your true nature. You mean he was trying to make me attack him? Exactly. If you had reacted with violence, it would have confirmed every fear about humans. It would have given him justification to push for human exclusion from academic programs, maybe even from the galactic community entirely. Hana remembered that moment in the lab, the way Vextai had goaded her, practically begging her to hit him. She had been so focused on the personal insult that she hadn't seen the larger game being played. But I didn't hit him, she said. No. Instead, you did something much more effective. You showed him exactly what human restraint looks like. You demonstrated that even when injured, even when provoked, humans choose to be controlled rather than violent. And when I helped Kithara, you showed them what humans do with their capabilities when others are in danger. You move faster than most species can even perceive, diagnosed a complex problem in seconds, and used your physical strength to save a life. Quillith's form brightened. You proved that human power serves to protect, not to dominate. Hana sat quietly for a moment, processing this information. She had thought the challenges she faced were just about fitting in, about proving she was smart enough to be here. She hadn't realized she was representing her entire species in some kind of ongoing test. Is this why there are so few humans? In academic programs? She asked. Partly. But also because humans are genuinely difficult to accommodate. Your environmental needs, your physical requirements, your learning speeds, all of it requires special consideration. It's easier for universities to focus on species that fit existing infrastructure. So what happens now? Now you continue to be yourself, Quillith said, but with understanding of the larger context. Every action you take, every choice you make, helps shape how the galaxy sees humanity. Not just as individuals, but as a species. That's a lot of pressure. Yes, it is. But consider this. In the 3 weeks since the incident with Vextai, applications from human students to galactic universities have increased by 30%. Word is spreading that humans can succeed in academic environments. Hannah was surprised. Really? Really? Your presence here, your achievements, your conduct under pressure, all of it is being watched and evaluated. Not just by the students and faculty here, but by administrators across the galaxy. And Vextai has been very quiet lately. I believe your demonstration of restraint followed by competence has given him much to think about. As if summoned. By their conversation, a soft chime indicated someone was requesting entry to the meditation chamber. Quillith checked the access panel, and her gaseous form swirled with what might have been amusement. Speak of the devil, as humans say. Vextai is requesting permission to enter. Hannah felt her heart rate increase. She hadn't spoken to him since the incident in the lab. Let him in. The door opened and Vextai entered, his crystalline body subdued, and less brilliant than usual. He stood near the entrance, not approaching either of them. I wish to speak with you, Lihanna, he said, his voice lacking its usual sharpness. If you are willing, I'm listening. I have been reconsidering my behavior and my assumptions about your species. He paused, light refracting through his form in patterns Hannah had learned indicated uncertainty. I was wrong. About what specifically? About humans being primitive. About your presence here being undeserved. About what would happen if I pushed you to anger. His voice grew quieter. I thought I understood what dangerous meant. I was mistaken. Hannah waited for him to continue. When I grabbed your arm, I expected you to strike back. I wanted you to strike back. It would have proven that humans are just sophisticated animals, driven by instinct and aggression. But I didn't. No, and in the days since I have observed you more carefully. The way you move through the station, constantly adjusting your actions to avoid damaging things. The way you hold back in physical activities, not because you cannot do better, but because your full capability would be unsafe for others. Vextai moved closer, though still maintaining a respectful distance. Most revealing was your rescue of Cathara. I watched the security footage. Do you know what I saw? Hannah shook her head. I saw a being moving at speeds that should have been reckless, but with perfect control. I saw someone diagnose a complex medical emergency in seconds and respond with exactly the right amount of force to help without causing harm. I saw capabilities that could easily be used to dominate instead. Being used to serve. What are you saying? I'm saying that I understand now what human strength really means. It is not the ability to break things. It is the choice not to break them when you easily could. Vextai's form brightened slightly. I came to apologize, Lihanna, and to ask if you would consider working with me on the final project for advanced materials. I believe I could learn much from your perspective. Hannah looked at him for a long moment, then at Quillith, who was watching the exchange with obvious interest. I'd like that, she said finally, but I have one condition. Name it. No more tests. No more trying to provoke me to prove some point about humans. If we're going to work together, it's as equals. Agreed, Vextai said immediately. Though I should warn you, many others will continue to test you. Not maliciously, but because they need to understand what humans truly are. Let them, Hannah said, feeling a new confidence settling over her. I'm starting to understand that the best way to show what humans are is just to be one. As Vextai left, Quillith floated closer to Hannah. Well handled. I believe you are beginning to grasp the complexity of your situation. I'm starting to, Hannah agreed. And I think I'm ready for whatever comes next. She was thinking about her brother Jiwan's words before she left Earth, about proving that humans could be more than just soldiers and survivors. She was beginning to understand that the proof wouldn't come from hiding her capabilities, but from showing what those capabilities looked like when guided by wisdom, restraint, and compassion, the galaxy was watching, and Hannah was ready to show them what humanity could really be. Hannah had been counting 40 moments. That was how long she had been planning her response to everything that had happened since Vextai broke her arm. Not a response of anger or revenge, but something more sophisticated. Something that would demonstrate what humans were truly capable of when they stopped holding back. The opportunity came during the final assessment week for advanced engineering systems. Professor Tenther had designed a comprehensive practical examination that would test everything the students had learned during the semester. The challenge was complex. Design and build a functional environmental control system that could maintain life support for multiple species under emergency conditions. Most students approached it as a theoretical exercise, creating detailed plans and computer models. But the assessment allowed for actual construction if students chose to attempt it. Most didn't. The physical demands were considered too challenging for academic beings. Hannah chose to build. Moment one came when she submitted her construction proposal. The forms required lifting capacity estimates, time projections, and safety certifications, where other students listed not applicable for physical requirements. Hannah's numbers made Professor Tenther's chromatophores flash concerned orange. Miss Lee, the jellyfish-like professor, pulsed in worried colors. These specifications suggest you intend to work with materials that require industrial-grade mechanical assistance. Are you certain about these requirements? Yes, Professor. I've calculated the structural loads necessary for a system that could actually save lives in an emergency. It requires robust construction, but the lifting requirements alone ... won't be a problem for me. Hannah said simply. Moment 2 through moment 15 played out over the next 3 days as Hannah requisitioned materials that made the station's supply staff nervous. Metal beams that required hover carts for most species to move, dense atmospheric filters that came with handling warnings, power coupling systems that carried notices about their weight, and complexity. She carried everything herself. Students began gathering to watch as word spread that the human was actually building something instead of just designing it. They saw her lift materials that should have required mechanical assistance. They watched her work with dangerous power systems without the protective gear that regulations required for most species. How is she not dying? Hannah overheard one student whisper to another as she connected high-voltage power conduits with her bare hands. Human electrical resistance is off the charts, came the reply. What would kill us barely registers to them. Moment 16 came when Vextai approached her work area. He had been observing from a distance for days, but now he moved closer, studying her construction techniques. Your welding method is unconventional, he said. Human hands are steady enough for precision work that most species need robotic assistance. Hannah replied, not looking up from the joint she was creating. And our visual system can handle the brightness levels that would damage other types of eyes. I see. Vextai watched as she completed a connection that looked perfect to his crystalline precision standards. May I ask what you are building, exactly? A life support system that could actually handle a real emergency. Most of the theoretical designs I've seen would work fine in computer simulations, but they'd fail if you actually needed them to save lives. Moment 17 through moment 23 involved Hannah demonstrating problem-solving methods that left her observers speechless. When a critical component didn't fit properly, instead of redesigning around the problem or requesting different parts, she simply modified the component by hand. She bent metal that should have required industrial tools. She adjusted tolerances that should have needed precision machinery. She's reshaping the materials to fit her design instead of changing her design to fit available materials. Professor Tenther observed to Dr. Melkari, who had come to watch the spectacle. That's not how engineering is supposed to work. That's not how galactic engineering works, Dr. Melkari corrected. But humans evolved to modify their environment instead of just adapting to it. They don't just solve problems, they eliminate them. Moment 24 brought the first real test. Hannah's system was complex enough that it needed calibration, and the calibration process required someone to be inside the environmental chamber while atmospheric conditions were adjusted. For most species, this would require protective equipment and external monitoring for humans. "I'll just go in and adjust the sensors manually," Hannah said, opening the chamber door. "The atmospheric mix in there is untested," Professor Tenther warned, chromatophores flashing alarm patterns. "It could be toxic." "Human atmospheric tolerance range is pretty wide," Hannah said. "I'll be fine." She stepped into the chamber and began working while breathing air that would have been immediately fatal to most of the watching students. Through the transparent walls, they could see her moving normally, working efficiently, completely unaffected by conditions that would have required an environmental suit for anyone else. Moments 25 through 32 demonstrated human multitasking abilities that bordered on the supernatural. Hannah operated multiple control systems simultaneously, her enhanced reaction times allowing her to monitor and adjust dozens of parameters in real time. What would have required a team of specialists for most species, she handled alone. "How many things is she tracking at once?" someone asked. "All of them," Vextai answered, his voice filled with something between awe and concern. "She's monitoring every system simultaneously." Moment 33 came when something went wrong. A power coupling overloaded, sending electrical feedback through the entire system. Alarms began blaring and emergency protocols activated. Most students would have evacuated immediately. Hannah moved toward the problem. "Miss Lee, evacuate immediately," Professor Tenther commanded, flashing urgent red warning patterns. "Give me 30 seconds, Hannah called back, already opening the access panel to the overloaded system. What happened next took place too quickly for most of the observers to follow. Hannah's hands moved in a blur, disconnecting and reconnecting components, rerouting power flows and stabilizing the system before the automatic shutdown could engage. Sparks flew around her as she worked with live electrical systems that should have been lethal. 30 seconds later, the alarm stopped. The system stabilized. The danger passed. Moment 34 was the silence that followed. Every being in the room stared at Hannah as she calmly closed the access panel and checked her. "Readings. System is stable," she announced. "All parameters are within normal ranges. You just ... Professor Tenther's colors were flashing in patterns that had no translation. "You worked with live power systems during an overload event. With your bare hands." "Human electrical resistance is pretty high," Hannah said with a shrug. "And our nervous system can handle brief exposure to electrical fields that would stop most hearts." Moments 35 through 39 involved the final testing phase. Hannah's environmental control system didn't just work, it excelled. It could maintain stable atmospheric conditions for 12 different species simultaneously. It could respond to emergency situations automatically. It could be operated by a single individual or run completely autonomously. It was, Professor Tenther admitted, the most sophisticated system any student had ever built for the class. Moment 40 came, when the demonstration was complete and Hannah stood before the assembled students and faculty, her project functioning perfectly behind her. "Questions?" she asked. The room erupted. Everyone wanted to know how she had done it. How she had worked so quickly, so precisely, so fearlessly. How she had handled systems that should have been impossible for a single being to operate. But it was Vextai who asked the most important question. "Why did you do this? You could have submitted a theoretical design like everyone else and received full marks. Why did you choose to demonstrate your full capabilities?" Hannah looked around the room at all the faces staring at her. Aliens from dozens of species, all trying to understand what they had just witnessed. "Because someone broke my arm and told me I didn't belong here," she said simply. "He said humans were just primitive animals pretending to be civilized. He said we got into this program through intimidation, not merit." She gestured to her completed project. "This is what human engineering looks like when we stop holding back. This is what we're capable of when we're not constantly worried about breaking things or scaring people." "And the counting?" Vextai asked. I noticed you were counting something. Throughout the construction process. 40 moments, Hannah said. 40 demonstrations of what humans can really do when we choose to show you. You broke my arm in one moment of carelessness. I thought it was only fair to return the favor with 40 moments of revelation. The room was completely silent. So now, Hannah continued, humans are exactly as powerful as you feared. We can do things that seem impossible to most species. We can work in conditions that would kill you. We can solve problems that would require teams of specialists and industrial equipment. She paused, letting that sink in. But you also know something else now. You know that we choose to be gentle. You know that we use our capabilities to help others, not to dominate them. You know that when a crisis happens, humans don't run away from danger. We run. The emergency alarm started blaring just as Hannah was packing up her engineering project. 3 sharp blasts followed by a continuous tone that made everyone in the laboratory freeze with terror. She had never heard that particular alarm before, but the reactions of the alien students told her everything. She needed to know. This was the sound that meant people were going to die. Atmospheric breach in Section 7, came the announcement over the station's communication system. All personnel evacuate to emergency stations immediately. This is not a drill. Around her, students and faculty began moving toward the exits. With the quick but careful efficiency that came from regular emergency drills. But Hannah could see the fear in their movements, the way they kept looking back over their shoulders as if expecting the station to fall apart around them. What's Section 7? She asked Vextai, who was gathering his materials with crystalline precision despite the obvious stress. Industrial processing. Chemical refineries, atmospheric processing, power generation? His voice carried harmonics of worry. If there's been a breach there, the contamination could spread throughout the station. How long do we have? Depends on the size of the breach and what's leaking. Could be hours, could be minutes. Hannah looked around the evacuation route, watching her classmates move with practiced calm toward the emergency stations. Everyone was following protocol, doing exactly what they were supposed to do, but something bothered her about the whole situation. Who fixes it? She asked. What? The breach. Who goes in and fixes it while everyone else evacuates? Vextai paused in his packing. The automated systems will attempt repairs. If that fails, emergency crews will assess the situation once the area is secured. And if the automated systems can't handle it, then we evacuate the station and wait for a specialized repair ship to arrive. How long would that take? Several days, possibly weeks, depending on the nature of the damage. Hannah felt something cold settle in her stomach. Several days was too long. Kepler Station housed thousands of beings from dozens of species. If they had to evacuate completely, the logistical nightmare would be enormous. Students would lose their entire semester's work. Research projects would be destroyed. Some species couldn't survive long journeys in evacuation ships. I'm going to Section 7, she said. What? Vextai-esque crystal body flared bright with alarm. That is completely against protocol. The area is contaminated. Someone needs to see what's actually wrong. The automated systems might not be getting accurate data if there's atmospheric interference. Miss Lee, Professor Tenther's voice came. From behind her, chromatophores flashing urgent warning colors. You must evacuate with the others. Section 7 is sealed for safety reasons. Sealed how? Atmospheric barriers are in place. The environmental conditions inside are unknown and potentially lethal. Potentially lethal to whom? Professor Tenther paused, suddenly understanding what she was asking. To most species. But maybe not to humans? Miss Lee, I cannot authorize. You don't need to authorize anything, Hannah said, already moving toward the service corridors that would lead to Section 7. I'm a student, not station personnel. I'm responsible for my own decisions. Hannah, wait, Vextai called after her. You cannot do this alone. The industrial systems there are too complex for one being to handle. She paused and looked back at him. Are you volunteering to help? Vextai hesitated, then straightened his crystalline form with determination. Yes, my people's physiology can handle hostile atmospheric conditions better than most species. Not as well as yours, but well enough. This is highly irregular, Professor Tenther protested. But Hannah could see in the professor's color patterns that there was also hope there. Hope that maybe the situation could be resolved without a full station evacuation. Irregular situations require irregular solutions, Hannah said. Isn't that what you taught us in advanced problem solving? The journey to Section 7 took them through maintenance corridors that grew progressively more ominous as they approached the affected area. The air grew thicker, filled with chemical smells that burned Hannah's nose and made Vextai's crystal surface dull with protective coating. The atmospheric barriers are ahead, Vextai said, consulting a portable scanner. The contamination levels beyond this point are officially classified as immediately fatal to most galactic species. What about humans? For humans ... He checked. His readings again? Hazardous but survivable for limited periods. Your species' tolerance for toxic atmospheric conditions is noted as exceptional in the safety database. And crystalline beings? We can function in hostile environments for extended periods, but we move slowly and our efficiency is reduced. Hannah nodded. Then we work as a team. I'll handle anything that requires speed or strength. You handle anything that requires precision or technical knowledge. They passed through the atmospheric barriers into Section 7 immediately. Hannah could tell something was seriously wrong. The air was thick with chemical vapors that made breathing difficult even for her. Emergency lighting cast everything in hellish red shadows. And somewhere in the distance, she could hear the sound of escaping gases and failing containment systems. The main processing plant, Vextai said, pointing toward a massive industrial complex ahead of them. Something has ruptured one of the primary atmospheric processing units. As they got closer, the scale of the problem became clear. A massive pipe had burst, sending a mixture of toxic gases and corrosive chemicals into the air. The automated repair systems were sparking and failing, unable to cope with the combination of chemical damage and atmospheric interference. This is bad, Vextai said, his voice muffled by the protective filters he had activated. The rupture is in the main atmospheric recycling line. If this isn't repaired soon, the contamination will spread to every section of the station. Can it be fixed? Theoretically, yes. But it would require someone to manually shut down the flow, replace the damaged section, and restart the system. All while working in this atmospheric soup. How long would that take? For a full repair crew with proper equipment? 8 to 10 hours for 2 students with basic tools? Vextai's form dimmed. Impossible. Hannah looked at the damaged system, running calculations in her head. The pipe section that needed replacement was massive, probably weighing several tons. The manual shutoff valves were located in areas where the toxic gas concentration was at its highest. The precision work of connecting the new pipe would require steady hands and perfect vision in conditions that would quickly impair most beings. For most beings. It's not impossible, she said. It's just difficult. Hannah, even for a human, this is beyond... Is it? She was already moving toward the manual shutoff controls. You said it yourself? Humans can survive in conditions that would kill other species, and we're built to work fast under pressure. But the weight of the components is within human lifting capacity. She reached the first valve and began turning it, her enhanced grip strength allowing her to operate controls that would have required mechanical assistance for anyone else. The precision required is something humans excel at. She moved to the next valve, working systematically through the shutdown. Sequence. We evolved to make and use complex tools. Our hand-eye coordination is off the charts by galactic standards. The toxic environment is something I can handle for the time it takes to make the repairs. She finished the shutdown sequence and moved toward the damaged pipe section. The question is, can you guide me through the technical aspects while I do the physical work? Vextai was quiet for a moment, then his crystal form brightened with determination. Yes, I can do that. What followed was the most intense 2 hours of Hannah's life. Working together, she and Vextai accomplished what should have been impossible. Hannah lifted pipe sections that weighed more than most beings could move with mechanical assistance. She worked in atmospheric conditions that would have required full environmental suits for other species. She operated precision tools with steady hands, while breathing air that burned her lungs and made her eyes water. Meanwhile, Vextai provided the technical expertise she needed, guiding her through complex procedures, checking her work, and solving problems that required deep understanding of atmospheric processing systems. They worked as a perfect team. Hannah's human capabilities handling the physical demands while Vextai's crystalline precision managed the technical challenges. What should have taken a full repair crew 8 hours, they completed in 2 when the system came back online and the atmospheric readings began returning to normal. Both of them were exhausted. Hannah's human physiology had protected her from the worst of the toxic exposure, but she was still feeling the effects. Vextai's crystal structure had grown dull and cloudy from the chemical environment. "We did it," Vextai said, his voice carrying notes of amazement. "We actually did it." "Team effort," Hannah said, wiping chemical residue from her hands. "I couldn't have done the technical work and you couldn't have handled the physical demands." That's what cooperation is supposed to look like, isn't it? Different species working together, each contributing what they do best. As they made their way back toward the main sections of the station, they began encountering other beings, station personnel who had come to assess the situation.